This video contains spoilers for Halo Reach. Specifically Halo Reach, that's what this video is about. Reach is a prequel to Halo 1, and it's made very clear in the series what the fate of the characters in Reach is, so the spoilers don't matter that much. However, if you do want to go in blind, stop here and come back. But first, you hear me hitting those notes? Oh no! Hang on, before we get to the game, let's go back a few steps. When I was younger, my parents worked quite a lot, so I often spent afternoons after school with a childminder. She's a very lovely, kind lady who also has a son who's a few years older than me. So often when I'd go around to their house, I'd sit with him and play some co-op games on Xbox 360 or PS2. Some games I played in those days still remain as staples of my childhood, and I can't say that I don't miss the days when I used to sit with him and experience those timeless hits, knowing that he'd probably played them 1,000 times. Something you'll soon come to find out about this series of my favourite games of all time is I heavily give in to my nostalgia. In some way or another, every game on this list is affected by nostalgia, whether the game was the first time I ever played anything like it, or I just played it when I was younger. Because of that, I always try and at least find something meaningful in that bias. If that game was the first game I'd ever played like it, what made it so significant and important for me to praise it so highly? If I played it when I was younger, why is it stuck to me to this day to make it a notable part of my childhood? Taking that into consideration, there's one series that's always stuck out to me for the values it taught me and how it raised me to be the man I am today.
Look at that.
Out of what? What was that?
Halo is a trilogy of games. No, you didn't just mishear me, I said Halo is a trilogy of games. I find it easier on the heart to imagine that the original trilogy are the only games that are valid to the Master Chief story. These two games are acceptable as one is a prequel and one is a different perspective of the Covenant War going on. These three did not need to exist. These two are passable, this one is not. In my opinion, Halo would have been much better off with a softer reboot following Reach to keep the brand intact with a new direction. It's better to keep the legacy of Master Chief alive with a strong conclusion than to ruin it by milking it to death. Halo Combat Evolved was revolutionary for first-person shooters. The enemy AI set Halo apart from its peers from the first entry and set the bar high for the franchise. Halo 2 introduced online multiplayer, and once again set new standards by foregoing the need for dedicated servers and making it possible for friends and players to join matches together, pioneering what would soon become one of the biggest features of online multiplayer. Halo 3 is near perfect and a brilliant conclusion to the original trilogy, a grand narrative with an iconic lead. Halo 3 had people queuing outside of stores itching for a copy. ODST showed a different and far more human side of the story of 3, which is arguably one of the most important aspects of the whole series, showing how every soldier played at least some importance to winning the war against the Covenant. Finally, that leaves Halo Reach. Reach is a product of Bungie's years of honing their skills of this franchise, both from a narrative standpoint and a gameplay one. If anyone asked me what Halo they should play to get into the series, I would recommend Reach. If anyone asked me to recommend a fantastic first-person shooter, I would recommend Reach. If anyone asked me what my favourite shooter of all time is, I would say Reach. Reach's campaign is a prequel to the events of Halo 1. In the game you play as a Spartan soldier in a team called Noble, who have been deployed to check out some Covenant troops on the planet Reach. It soon becomes clear to Noble's team, however, that they are dealing with a threat way larger than they're capable of dealing with. Slowly losing their grips on the situation, Noble's objective switches from handling the Covenant threat to assisting the cause in any way they can. It's a series of sacrifices that ends up playing a tiny role in helping to stop the Covenant in Halo. Reach ends up being a far more emotion-driven narrative than any other story in the series. While the character of Master Chief is known as an unstoppable force single-handedly capable of taking on large-scale threats just for the fact that he's who he is, the Spartans of Noble Team are helpless, completely outmatched and outnumbered by their opposition. Throughout Reach, you feel their despair, their bargaining as they lose hope of turning the situation around. You feel the inevitability that they have no chance of winning. Noble's team were top-level Spartans, so it puts it into perspective all the bit more how hauntingly overpowered the Covenant are. Feeling all that emotional baggage and that immense threat on you makes the gameplay and narrative all the more exciting. Like I said before, Reach is the culmination of years of experience from Bungie. All of that comes together in the gameplay. Reach introduced assassinations to the franchise for the first time, which would then become a staple until Infinite went and ruined it for everyone. Halo really doesn't need much in terms of additions to the core mechanics to keep it interesting, so just adding the simple ability to catch an enemy off guard and instantly kill it is just what Halo needed in my opinion to give it that variation.
Why did it do that? I wasn't even looking at you.
Every weapon plays entirely differently. You don't just have variation in range, it's everything from projectiles to hit scans, to amount of ammo, and how each weapon can be used the most effectively. And that's not including the energy sword or gravity hammer, which while usable will probably be the most satisfying fun you'll have with Reach. Just pure boundless ego boosting in the form of an unstoppable melee weapon. That's the best way to describe both of these. Easily my favourite part of Reach are the vehicles. I have this weird obsession with vehicles in different video games. I just love having the access to a car or a bike or anything I can use to just traverse in a more exciting way. I think that obsession started with Reach. To steer with the vehicles in Reach, you use either the mouse if you're on mouse and keyboard, or use the analog stick on a controller. While this is probably not the most optimal way to control a vehicle, considering you can't look around without changing the direction you're driving, the unreliability of the driving and the slipperiness of it, never quite being in full control of it, makes for a much more engaging experience compared to the airtight, almost robotic feeling controls of other games. They aren't just one and dones either. The Ghost, Mongoose and Warthog are all used regularly, and the levels where you round around the city in a helicopter or go up in the spaceship to a Covenant ship are standout levels, which also break up the gameplay in an engaging way. Every aspect of the gameplay still holds up to this day. Even though the innovation of the game is clearly dated, it's completely solid and its simplicity actually makes it a lot more charming. Maybe that's just my nostalgia talking, but it really is a joy for me to play this. While I didn't play much of the online multiplayer growing up, going back to it in the Master Chief Collection, I can still clearly see that it was the pinnacle of the series. People die by the Halo Reach multiplayer, man. It's just so fun and easy to enjoy. The way everything is so perfectly balanced that you can have people either tryharding and aiming for the top of the leaderboard, or just messing about with some friends doing ridiculous things with vehicles and different weapons, and still find the same enjoyment in both on the same playfield. That is what you call good multiplayer. Halo Reach is a game that in my opinion is best experienced in co-op with friends. You'll notice all the footage you're seeing right now was recorded in a playthrough I did with a mate of mine. I didn't just choose to play through it with someone else because funny things happen.
Are you serious? Why have you done that?
Thermal looks clear for now.
Why did you do that?
We'll stand by for instructions.
He's trying to get out.
I chose to do it because, ultimately, Reach is a team game. In comparison to other games in the series, you are not just some gallivanting, unstoppable super soldier. The whole game is focused around the fact that the members of your team are just as valuable to the cause as you are. When you experience that alliance and unity in the company of another real person, it makes it so much more real. Riding on a Warthog with a friend manning the gunner on the back, or infiltrating a group of enemies, taking different routes to attack to take them all out. The campaign can act as a shared story. I've played Reach with a lot of different people now, but my playthroughs resonated the most with two different people, my childminder's son and my friend Eddie. The first time I ever played Reach was with my childminder's son, so that time spent with him will always be burnt into my brain when I think of it. I'd never played it before and he already had, so I was having the pleasure of experiencing it for the first time with one of my biggest role models, and he was having the pleasure of watching me discover one of my favourite games. When I played through it with Eddie, I'd grown up. I just got the Master Chief Collection to play with him and we hopped into Reach because it had just come out as DLC. Probably the first time I'd gone back to Reach for quite a few years. We'd both grown into full-on Halo fanboys. Hopping back into Reach was a joy and a return to a better time. From boys to men, we experienced that story again, and that story had completely recontextualized itself in my head. Going back into Reach, knowing the story and, ultimately, knowing the conclusion, we felt that conclusion racing towards us and struggled to accept our fate. Because we'd both played it before, we instantly felt that dread when we saw those first aliens on Reach. That at the end, we would both die. That's right, if you didn't heed my warnings at the beginning of this video, you'll now have been spoiled for the end of the game. The not so secret of Reach is that all of these characters, in one way or another, die by the end of the game. I had never played a game like it, where the good guys lost. Reach being my first experience of such an abstract concept was another reason it stuck with me so vividly, and it's one of the things that I really considered when making this video, why that was so significant. Reach taught me about war, about mortality, and about losing. It taught me that the nature of war doesn't pick favourites, like I'd come to expect in previous Halo games. It taught me that the people you think should win don't always win, and helped me accept that fact growing up. It taught me that death can come at any time, in war and in life. Like the death of Kat, one of the Spartans on Noble Team. Kat plays one of the most important roles in the Noble Team. She's a tactician, not only being a great soldier, but also incredibly intelligent. She's a big factor in the brains of the operation. That's why her death is one of the most shocking in the whole series. Out of nowhere, she's sniped through the head by an elite field marshal, instantly dying. It feels way too real, and it's the first time you're really confronted with both the team's mortality and your own. In real war, there are no super soldiers wearing suits of armor, carrying plasma grenades and gravity hammers. And for the first time, we see Noble Team as what they are, soldiers. Not heroes, not immortal deities, just soldiers. I say it's the first time you're really confronted with that mortality, but it's not the first time it subverts your expectations about the role of the heroes and the tone the story takes. The first time that happens would be George's sacrifice to blow up a Covenant blockade above Reach. He sacrificed himself to stay on board with a bomb on one of the ships, setting it off to destroy the whole fleet. However, it wasn't the sacrifice he thought it was, as more Covenant carriers soon make it to Reach. It's not that his death was in vain, but it wasn't the type of death that a Spartan like him wanted or deserved. It's how Carter, the leader of Noble Team, describes it after that lets you know how you should feel about the fate that's fallen upon the team. He died thinking he was saving the world. We should all be so lucky. On a more personal note, as a kid I was really afraid of dying. Just a proper irrational fear of death, and that after I died there would just be a yawning nothingness stretching into infinity. Much like how I've thrown these spoilers on top of all of you, before I played Reach, my childminder son pointed to the box and said this to me. He dies, then she dies, then him, then you. I nearly cried. I thought to myself, I'm the good guy. I'm the main character. I'm the Spartan ready to take on the Covenant. How could I possibly die without being able to do anything about it? As much as I didn't want it to happen, the last mission of Reach, Lone Wolf, confronted me with that mortality. But as much as that final mission scared me even more and pushed my own mortality into my face, I felt something else all those years after playing it for the first time. Relief. By the time you get to the final mission, you've filled your purpose. You've done everything you need to do. Each member of Noble before you sacrificed themselves for you so that you could complete your mission. Even if you didn't do much, you did everything you could. It's weirdly the most human aspect of the whole series. Most people die without serving much purpose, but even if they didn't serve a purpose, it didn't mean that their life didn't matter, because you did it. You lived your life the best way you could, and the best way you could was any way that you did. If you studied any kind of English or literature in school, you'll know that the theme of conflict is important in almost all stories, and Halo Reach is no exception. Reach is all about conflict. Lone wolf versus teamwork, heroes versus villains, humans versus aliens. The theme of war is apparent throughout the whole story, and it's portrayed better than any war games in the past decade. Sheer hopelessness and dread of the impending great war that stands before both sides. There are a lot more underlying themes and plotlines that stretch out into much more thoughtful processes throughout the story that you can spot at points. The Covenant killed humans because they fear them. They fear soldiers and Spartans alike, and demonize the human race in order to deem mass genocide reasonable. To humans, they're nothing more than aliens, hell-bent on destroying the human race. It's an important part of Reach for me that you're fighting aliens. Not only was it the reason that my mum let me play Halo, because she deemed it a more acceptable game than Call of Duty, but it also brings up a big moral dilemma with the theme of war. The Covenant are not just bad guys. They are not just the enemy. They are completely alien to us, an incomprehensible threat to all humans that must be defeated, because we have no understanding of their culture or their intentions or their morals. You're simply doing what you think is right, and I think that's what I took from the series the most. From seeing the flaws in the understanding of the war between humans and the Covenant, I valued trying to understand much more the things I didn't like, or that I thought didn't like me. It taught me to put myself in others' shoes, and to work that through before doing anything drastic. But more than that, I learned to do what I believe is right. At the beginning of Reach, the Noble Team didn't like you. You're coming in as a lone wolf to a team that are already so tight, and all excel in the same way you do. You're immediately told you're not special, but as a team, you're the most special thing of all. Although the Noble Team didn't like you at first, they still made sacrifices and even sacrificed themselves because they thought it was right, and they trusted the people around them that it was right. I value friendship and close relationships so much in my own life, and I try to keep myself around people who I believe can help me make the right decisions. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from Reach that I took from my nostalgia, how much I value the Noble team and what they taught me about cooperation and loyalty to each other. I hope I can play Reach with 20 more friends. I hope I get to see others experience what I did all those years ago, and I want to confront myself more with the themes of the game, because it's shaped me more than I could ever realise. This video is about why I love Halo Reach, but it's also a tribute to it as a title that shaped me growing up and continues to shape me to this day. No matter what happens to the Halo series, I'll always come back to this title with a lot of respect for a game that truly left me a better person. This is Bloby's 11th favourite game of all time. If you didn't know, on the first Saturday of every month this year, I've set myself a goal of posting a video essay about one of my favourite games of all time. If you want to see the games I've covered so far in this series, click on this playlist to watch all the videos I've made on the favourite games so far.